In 100 years, there's going to be no workforce, no innovation, no social security, no healthcare for the elderly, hyper-nationalism. We're in the middle of a population collapse. Ah! Okay, but seriously, it sounds like a conspiracy, but we are on the verge of having a population collapse. And according to some big figures like Elon Musk and others like him, big tech founders, they say that it's more of a threat to humanity than even AI.
I think that the biggest problem the world will face in 20 years is population collapse.
So in the early 1900s, there was 2 billion people in the world. And today there's 8 billion people. Originally, we thought that by the year 2100, we would have 11 billion people in the world. But with new AI models making predictive tests, we now see that the population is going to be about 6 billion, which is 2 billion less than there is today. Right now, the global birth rates are still on the rise. We still have about 360,000 births per day, and that's going to continue to happen. But when we hit the year 2050, that global population, which is rising, is going to hit a plateau, and then it's going to start to decline. We're already seeing a decline in population amongst certain countries. In fact, there's 32 countries right now that are currently having declining populations. So the global fertility rate in 1963 was 5.3. Today, it's nearly half that at 2.4. Civilization has to have a fertility rate of 2.1 to be able to sustain in a healthy way their economy and their workforce. Right now, the country with the lowest fertility rate is South Korea at 0.81. They are way below what is considered healthy, and they are in the middle of a population collapse. Now, when we look at the whole world as a whole, this isn't going to happen until about 2100. The country that's going to be hit the hardest by 2100, who also happens to have 18% of the worldwide GDP, you probably already know who I'm going to say, is China. And this is mostly due to the One-Child Policy Act that they enacted in 1979 to 2016, which limited women to having one child. This policy had significant humanitarian issues on the country, such as high rates of adoption, high rates of abortion, human trafficking, and something else that I probably shouldn't say because I don't want Google to penalize me for it. But let's just say they weren't very pleasant to some types of babies that were born. So China's realized that they made a grave mistake. Their population was increasing, so they enacted one-child policy. Now they have realized that their population is going to collapse, so now they have the two-child policy to combat this, and now each woman can have 2 children, which, by the way, is crazy to me that a country can tell a human being how many children they can have. I mean, this is just insane. These governments think that we're pawns in a game of chess and they can just move us around to fit their agendas. That's the other problem with this world, not to get too off topic, is there's just so many narratives and agendas of these countries and organizations and governments out there. I mean, you've got scientists who are taking monetary donations from political entities, which that's why no one believes in science anymore. People don't believe in science because politicians are making everything corrupt. We live in a corrupt world. So a lot of people are like, I don't want to bring children up in this crazy world that we live in. That's one of the reasons, another reason for the population collapse that's going to be happening. But the biggest reason for the population collapse is simply because women have become more empowered in education and in the workforce. It's a fantastic thing for women. I mean, I can't believe that the world was not like this before, that women who are the mothers and nurturers of society, that they birthed civilization, did not have the same rights as men. And it probably goes back to the fact that back in the past, before we had weapons and everything was physical, well, men were just stronger. So men could, if they wanted something, they would just pound it into society and say, this is how it's gonna be, do something about it. That was wrong, and I'm glad that society is finally becoming more advanced so that all of these different types of people can have the same rights. That's my opinion. That's what I think is the reason for this inequality. You know, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. So this population collapse, it's going to cause some pretty significant and severe damage to society, especially as technology continues to advance. People are going to live longer. And we know that people are living longer because in the 1950s, the average median age was 25, but today it's 33. So people are living longer. We have more technology. We are having less births because of empowerment of women in education. So typically, the more educated a woman is, the less children she's going to have. And this is just a family statistic that's seen in cultures and environments all across the planet. Researchers and scientists know that there's a correlation between education, income, and how many children you have. It's taught in academics. It's known all across the world in all different cultures that when a family, especially the woman, has a low education and no money, they have less kids. And this is just because of a simple primitive and instinctive nature to survive. You have more kids because they can go out and fetch things. Like in certain parts of Africa, they can send their kids to go and get water and send this kid over here to do this and this kid to do that. And if something were to happen to one of the children, there's still more to help the family survive. But we don't need to have those very primitive, instinctive lifestyles anymore, because we have education, we have technology. So we don't need to have as many kids. So there's less kids. And like I mentioned, to have a healthy population, the civilization needs to have a global average of 2.1. We are reaching that 2.1 point. By 2050, we are going to be below that 2.1. We're going to be in a declining population. It's going to cause chaos for the world, especially as we start to feel these effects, because it's going to cause a lot of issues. It's going to cause there to be less middle-class working force, young people, because there's going to be less young people than there are older people. We're going to be upside down. All these people up here are going to be old, and they're going to need care, health care from the younger people. They're going to need many things from the younger people. And the younger people are just going to be this very small section down here, like an upside down pyramid. And it's going to cause a huge, huge issue. Less people working. There's going to be less innovation in the world, less production of technology, because young people are the ones who drive innovation and who have new ideas. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of wisdom from older people, but there's going to be a point, especially as we continue to increase the life expectancy of people, that those last 20 years of your life, you depend on society for your survival because of your declining health. Could be mental health, could be physical health, could be economic health. You need help from the younger parts of society, the systems that are built and that are put into place. Part of these systems that are put into place is making sure that there's money like Social Security to support the economy of the older population. We may not have Social Security by the time this population collapse really truly affects us. Not only that, but healthcare, there's going to be less healthcare for older people. There's going to be so many older people. There's going to be physically not enough people to tend to the massive amount of elderly in the population, such as people that have end-stage life and need care. The other thing that this population collapse might cause is hyper-nationalism, because since there's less people in the world, that means that there's going to be smaller militaries. Basically, every single aspect of society today, every single group, every single organization is going to be just a little bit smaller, because there's less people who can actually truly in a healthy manner operate these organizations. So hopefully we can combat this population collapse with creating technology that will prevent us from having to do these human tasks like lifting things and all that kind of stuff that's physically involved with being young on society. But hyper-nationalism, that's the big one. That is basically, so we see today with politics, where we have these nationalists, people who are like so for the country, USA, USA. We think that right now we have extremes with the left and the right. Well, wait till we have a extreme population collapse with extreme mental health crisis globally because of the strain and the permanent recession that we're going to be put into. Imagine the hyper-nationalism. We're not only going to have far right groups and far left groups, but we're going to have far north groups, far east groups, far south groups, far this group. We're going to have so many small pockets of extreme groups because we're basically going to be going back to primitive civilization. Now, 6 billion people is still a lot of people. The global population during Jesus' time, 2,000 years ago, was 300 million. So they seem to have made it work, but not really, because back then people were still lynching and people were still chopping off your hands when you stole things, and they were still doing all these crazy barbaric acts that we just couldn't even imagine seeing today in society, and hanging people. I mean, not only a couple hundred years ago, people were still hanging people on average. It's crazy the amount of brutality that has occurred in the past when the populations are small. The amount of brutality is just so extreme, because when there's large groups of people, you really can get into these conversations and get people on your side and agree to things on a civil basis and write laws and all these different things. But as populations get smaller, like if we look at primates in the wild who have very, very small populations, how do they come about things? Well, probably they have to smash each other over the head with baboon sticks. Well, that's what happens. They're like small societies, they have to resort to violence. So I think that when our population declines and we have this population collapse, we're going to have smaller militaries, but I think that there's going to be more extreme violence and more hyper-nationalism. People who are so extreme and who are so fearful for the economy, for the world, for the survival of the species, that people are going to start to create extreme beliefs on how the world needs to live and how the world needs to govern itself. Hopefully we don't see rises of communism, because communism is the worst thing for society. I mean, communists think that they know what's best for the world, for their population, but do they really? Because you look at China and they're like, well, we're not sure that you guys can manage your own decisions, so that's why we're going to command you on what we believe should happen. And we're going to have the one-child policy because we see this problem, and you guys are going to do this because we know it's going to fix what's going on, our predictions. Well, guess what? It did not fix their predictions. In fact, it made it worse. It turned things upside down. So communism is not a solution. It's made up of people, just regular people, who have thoughts just like you and I do, who try to enact something through power. My last comments here is that experts say that planet Earth can support a global population of humans of 10 billion people. There's this Georgia Guidestones, and it has the 10 commandments of what is supposed to be living. It's basically this set of this rock in Georgia that has 10 commandments on it. And some people think it's like a conspiracy that big communists or world leaders have this plan to reduce the human population to 500 million because that's what's required to sustain a healthy civilization. I'm not sure what these things are for, but I'm going to read you the 10 commandments. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, and seek harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds like communism. I'm not too sure about some of the things that they said. Some of the things I agree with, like, yeah, we need to have harmony with nature. We need to have peace and just. And we need to have a court order. We need to have a world court order where different countries can be punished for crimes. And we kind of have something like that already. But let me know what you guys think about in the comments. Either way, this video was not to cause like chaos or to make people panic and stuff like that. It's just, I wanted to talk about this global collapse because it is a serious thing and it is truly a huge threat to society. I mean, when you're talking about reducing the working population and no health care and economic well-being for the elderly of the world, and most of the people in the world are going to be elderly, it is a huge problem. Yeah, I'm not sure what the solution is. You know, the last time we had a population collapse like this was in the mid-14th century during the Black Plague, and everybody knows what happened to them. Yeah, we recovered from it. If we have this global population collapse, are we going to recover from it? Probably. Is it going to cause a permanent recession and massive mental health crisis? Probably. Is it going to cause issues for the elderly not having health care and economic well-being? Probably. I don't know what the solution is. You know, maybe you guys might have some ideas what the solution is. Let me know in the comments. And that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching. Next time.